right, 13.2 is going to start our discussion of consumer credit. And the first thing is you're going to have a fair bit of writing to do, I'm fairly certain. So we're going to spend a little time looking at that. So consumer credit. Consumer credit refers to borrowing money to finance purchases of things like cars, furniture, appliances, jewelry, electronics, etc. Technically, real estate mortgages, like when you buy a house, are also consumer credit, but they usually involve a much larger amount over a much larger time, so we're going to save our discussion about mortgages for another section. Okay? So jot that information down. All right, so consumer credit can take on one of two different kinds of forms. There's the one kind of form that's known as the piece of plastic in your wallet called a credit card. Okay, and so lots of people offer credit cards. There's that kind of a loan. We're going to talk about that kind of a consumer credit in a minute. The other kind of consumer credit we're going to talk about first is what's called an installment loan. Now, an installment loan, also known as a closed-end credit, involves borrowing a certain amount for a certain item. Okay, so this would be like borrowing for the car loan. This would be like borrowing for an appliance at Best Buy, or for that amazing television you've had your eye on, or whatever it is. You have a specific amount that you're borrowing, and that's the only item you're borrowing the money for. It's not like a credit card, okay? Now, when you borrow money in a closed-end credit, typically, at the outset, there's a set amount that you're supposed to pay per month to pay the item off. This is how a car loan works, for instance, right? You borrow the money for the car, and you have to pay a certain amount back to that bank or that credit union or that lending institution every month until the car's paid off 4 years later or something like that. Okay, there's a certain amount per month, there's a certain length of time, and as long as you make those payments in that way, everything's all happy, sort of. At least nobody comes and takes your car away, right? All right, so that's a closed-end credit. How are we doing on writing things down? Are we almost there? Okay, we're going to look at an example of this. We're going to talk about Ann and Andy. And we're going to talk about Ann and Andy for the rest of the semester, actually. So Ann and Andy have a refrigerator, and it dies unexpectedly. They're in the midst of paying off debt, and they don't have the cash to buy a new refrigerator. Against their better judgment, which would obviously be the case because they were in the process of paying off debt, and what are they about to do? They decide they're going to go borrow some money to buy a refrigerator, obviously against their better judgment in this situation. And they're going to finance it, and they have a store. The store offers 6 months of interest-free financing. Have you heard of those kinds of offers before? Almost everybody offers something like this. They're drawing you in. It's a bait-and-switch thing, okay, so be careful. But they're offering a certain amount of free time that you have to pay the money back. Let's see. The store offers a 6 months free financing. As long as Ann and Andy pay off the fridge in those 6 months, then there's no interest. That's what they're offering. Okay? The store requires a $200 down payment on the $2,000 refrigerator. All right, so $2,000 refrigerator, that's the sticker price on the shelf. Down payment means how much they have to pay for it right now in order to get it. Okay? So there's lots of things that require down payment. Not everything does, but sometimes things will require down payment. Typically, when we talk about mortgages, and we'll get into that section later, that requires down payments. Okay, so this one's going to require a down payment as well. So the first question is how much they are going to have to finance or could be financing. So that has to do with how much money the product costs and how much money they're paying right now. So how would I find out that amount for this particular problem?
$2,000 minus $200.
Right. It's a $2,000 refrigerator, and they are paying $200 of it at the time that they take it home. So how much money are they financing? They are financing $1,800. So far, so good? So finding the amount that's financed, all you're doing, I'm not even going to bother to write a formula, is it's the purchase price minus the down payment. That's all you're doing when you find the amount that's financed. Now, the second one talks about the particular situation we actually read above. It says, how much does the couple need to pay each month to avoid finance charges? Now, what did the problem talk about avoiding finance charges? How could we do that? How do we avoid finance charges? Pay everything within 6 months. Did you catch that? Okay. So we have to pay it all off within 6 months. So if we owe $1,800, how much would we need to pay off every month on average in order to not have interest charges start accruing? 300. So how do we get that? Right. So we've got our $1,800, the amount we're financing, and we divide it by 6 because we have 6 months to do this in. Right. So we would have to pay how much? $300 per month. Okay, everybody with me so far? Okay, it's not hard math, right? Okay. Now, here's where things get a little bit different, and this is a real world situation. This is how it really works. If Ann and Andy don't pay off the fridge in the first 6 months, which is what they're counting on, make no mistake, that is what the lending institution, they're not giving you free money. They're counting on a number of people not being able to make those payments and pay it off. So if you don't pay it off, the store actually backdates the interest, which means they backdate they charge you interest throughout that 6 months. That 6 months that you didn't pay any money or that you didn't pay enough money, they charge you interest for that 6 month time span. Okay? The store will backdate the interest 12% add-on interest, at which point Ann and Andy will then be put on a payment plan to pay off the balance over the next 2 years. So if they don't make all their payments like they said they were going to before the interest-free time ran out, now they're going to be told exactly how much they have to pay. Now, let's talk about what happens. This says how much interest will be added on. Now, add-on interest is simple interest. So you might want to jot that down. Where this says add-on interest, this is exactly what we talked about in section 1 as simple interest. And we had a formula for finding simple interest. Do you remember what it was? I equal PRT. Everybody with me? We're going to take a look at that. What would P be in this problem? Okay, so is it the 1,800 or is it the 2,000?
18.
What do you think?
1,800.
1,800, right? P is the amount that you borrowed. They didn't actually borrow the whole 2,000 because they paid 200 of it at the time they purchased their fridge. So the P in this problem is the 1,800. It's the amount they borrowed. What is R? 0.12. That's the 12% interest rate. What is T? Nope.
32.
Nope.
Or,
Nope.
30.
Nope. Say it louder for me. It is 6 months. Well, okay, so let's pause for a second because I don't want to write 6 in just yet. Why is it the 6 months? Because was that the last number we had to pick from? That's the last number to pick from the problem. Well,
Because that was for the 6 months that they had to pay off.
yeah, this question right now is talking about the interest that happened during that time when we weren't able to make those payments like we were supposed to. It's talking about the backdated amount, that backdated time frame. Everybody with me? Okay, so this amount that we're actually talking about from before. All right, so it's 6 months, but we're not putting 6 into the problem for T. Because T is always measured in years. So what should we be putting in? Right. 0.5.
So you would do plus the 2 years?
No, we'll get there in a minute. We're just talking about the backdated interest right now. Okay? All right, so we have the 1,800, we have the 0.12, and we have the 0.5. So somebody grab your calculator and tell me what happens when we didn't pay that off in the 6 months we were supposed to. We now owe an additional $108 on the price of that refrigerator. So all of a sudden now the fridge didn't really cost us $2,000, did it?
Why did we use 0.5 instead of 6?
Because time is always measured in years. So 6 months would be half of a year. Yeah.
Okay.
So you can always think of time as being, if you've given a month, is you're going to divide it by 12. Because we're going to turn it into number of years. Yeah.
So it's never going to be weeks or months.
Nope, not the time in the problem. The T in the problem is always measured in years. And they create the formulas to be set up so that they're universal, so we've got that feature in common all the time. Otherwise, we'd have to have multiple different formulas. Say, oh, if it was given in months, you use this formula. If it was given in years, we don't do that. So we're always going to measure T in years. Okay?
So simply, if it's a year, we just put 1.
Yeah, if it were a year, we'd put 1. Exactly. Okay, let's take a look at part D. All right, we will let part D be our last problem for today. Part D says, what is the total amount to be repaid? All right. So to be repaid, we have to have our new principal. That's what we just talked about, right? We take the original $1,800 that we owed money on when we did not pay it for it at the time of purchase. And what do we have to add to that? That 108, that is the backdated interest that we did not pay. Okay? So what is our new amount that we actually owe? 1908. Now that's not completely answering this question yet. Okay? You see that 1908 only took care of the interest backwards, the 6 months we didn't pay for it. We still have to do, just like Tyler said, and talk about the interest over the next 2 years that we're going to be making payments now. All right, so how do we do that? Well, again, you've seen a formula for this. This was that original simple interest formula, found the amount that you have to have later. And it looked like this. If that formula looks familiar, say yes. Yes, we've seen that before, right? Now, that P in that formula is the new principal. What is the new principal? 1908. Okay, are you with me? It's a new principal. It's the original 1,800 plus the interest during that time frame. And then we have 1 plus. What was R? 0.12. 0.12. That's the 12%. What's T now?
2.
That now is 2. We have got 2 years over which, moving forward, we are going to pay off this refrigerator. Or they're going to come and take it away. It's called repos. You know what I'm talking about, right? All right. All right, so working this particular problem, we're going to work from the inside out, unless your calculator tax it just like this, which would be fine. If you work from the inside out, you start inside the innermost parentheses with the multiplication part. You're going to do 0.12 times 2, which is going to give you 0.24, and then you're going to add the 1 to it. So now you're going to have 1.24, and then you're going to multiply that value by the 1908 at the beginning to get what value? So you will not be paying $1,800 more for that refrigerator. You will be now paying $2,365, almost $66 for that refrigerator. Does not sound like quite the bargain it did when they told you no interest, does it? Okay. So we're going to look at the rest of Ann and Andy's refrigerator scenario next time.